Welcome to the CalHFA Housing Finance Agency Dream for All Shared Appreciation Loan Program. This is an amazing program, but I got to tell you, in over 20 years of doing this, I don't think I have ever seen a program that led to more unprepared misinformation hitting the mainstream sort of social media feeds as this particular program. It led to a lot of confusion last year in the first iteration of this program, and I expect that we're going to see the same thing this time around. So thank you guys for all being here today. If you're a lender, if you're an agent or a real estate practitioner, you're going to leave here more educated than when you came. If you are a prospective buyer, you are really going to be empowered in the seat to at least understand what your next steps need to be if this is a program that interests you. I would love to sort of keep all questions to the end. We've got a lot of ground to cover. I think it's a pretty methodical presentation that I put together for you guys today. So it's going to inadvertently end up answering most questions, but we do have a lot of ground to cover. I will keep some time at the end for some open-ended questions, but in interest of everybody's time here, I wanted to make sure that I'm sensitive to that, and I just kind of keep rolling forward with the information. As always, you can reach out to me. You can shoot me a message on Facebook, on Instagram. My contact information is on the lower left side of the screen there. You can always call me, text me, email me. Hell, you can send me smoke signals if you want, and I'll get back to you very quickly. All right, so our agenda today, what we're going to try and get through is to cover basically three big questions out there and then cover some frequently asked questions. The first of those questions is, who exactly is CalHFA and what is the Dream for All Shared Appreciation Program? Number two is, who the heck is eligible for this program? And number three is, what are the steps in order to obtain this really prolific and special program? After that, like I said, we're going to come back to a series of frequently asked questions that I put together that I think is going to cover about 95% of the outstanding questions you'll have by the time we get there. So let's roll, okay, guys? Feel free to put questions into the chat. I will do my best to address those at the end of the presentation as well. So, number one, what is CalHFA and what is the Dream for All, or otherwise known as the DFA program? So in 1975, the California Housing Finance Agency was chartered to become the state's affordable housing lender. Their goal is to support the needs of low and moderate income renters with financing and program options that really have an emphasis on equity. Now, what does that mean? So if I were to line up 100 first-time home buyers and I were to interview them one at a time, asking them, what is the single biggest challenge that you face migrating from being a renter and leaping into home ownership? I mean, you're certainly going to see a myriad of different answers coming to there, but I think that, people sort of genuinely and kind of authentically know that you got to have a pretty decent credit profile in order to buy a home, right? Every once in a while, we kind of get that outlier that just, thinks anything is possible when they've paid zero attention to their, financial makeup up to that point. But most people, I think, understand that you need to have a good credit profile and a decent amount of income in order to be able to pay a mortgage back. Almost universally, the single biggest hurdle that a first-time homebuyer will face is down payment or lack thereof. So when we're talking about programs to facilitate home ownership for first-time home buyers that have an emphasis on equity, that equity is exactly that. It's the down payment solution. How do we get people into homes when in a very high-cost living environment, like we all know Southern California and most of California is, it's very difficult for borrowers to save $60, $70, $80 or $1,000 or more in order to buy a home. So, in the last fiscal year of 2022 and 2023, CalHFA actually was successful in helping almost 14,000 families through their entire myriad of different programs take critical steps utilizing towards home ownership, utilizing all of their different programs. In the 2022-23 fiscal year, the state of California and Governor Newsom approved $300 million in down payment assistance for qualified first-time home buyers and their households with the launch of the Dream for All program. And it was mid-year last year, and it was the first time we've ever seen anything like this. Now, that program helped borrowers with up to a 20% down payment solution to take their out-of-pocket expense to buy a home either considerably down and in many, many cases eliminated it altogether. So it worked well. Now, there was definitely some challenges that we faced last year. So $300 million sounds like a big amount of money. You guys, that money between when the program was launched and when the entirety of the funds was gone was a total of 10 days. 10 days only, $300 million of it gone out the window, and the program was ceased. So a lot of people were talking about it, right? A lot of realtors, a lot of lenders, you went on social media, it sounded like everybody was doing these programs. When the truth of the matter is, very few people were actually successfully executing these programs. So it was more talk than bite. Now, why did the money go so quick? Well, you know, the opportunity to get a 20% down payment assistance to purchase a home is huge, and it doesn't exist essentially in any other platform across the lending institution. So a lot of people went after it. But there was also some really significant registration issues that CalHFA was not foreseeing. There was a lot of misuse of the money. This institution is designed to support the needs of low to moderate income households here in the state of California. It didn't exactly roll out that way, and a lot of people that really didn't need that money were in position to take that money and take it out of the hands of people that could have really done something special in their life. So in this new budget, the state of California has approved an additional $220 million. And although you might be thinking to yourself, like, wow, what does that mean? We're going to have like 6 days, 7 days in order to execute this program? Well, not exactly. They really put their heads together, and I think, you know, it's not often that we look at our government and say, wow, they really nailed it. But I think they did some very meaningful changes to the program that are going to result in a more fair distribution of this money. It's going to allow people to have an opportunity to shop appropriately instead of sort of feeling this impulse to have to make unwise decisions, otherwise the money was going to slip through their fingers. And the registration process is totally unique. So what I'd like you guys to understand right now, whatever you think you know about last year's Dream for All program, forget it. Throw it out the window, because this new iteration, this second iteration of the DFA program is entirely different than what it was last year. Same basic fundamental theory of how this money is used and how it gets paid back, but the way it's going to get administered and to whom it gets administered is literally night and day difference. Important that you know that. So, oops. Here we go. So what is the Dream for All program? So the DFA program, and by the way, when I say Dream for All, DFA, it's the same program, okay? So those are used synonymously with each other. But what it actually is a shared appreciation program that loans qualified home buyers, sorry about the grammar there. It provides them with loans for down payment and or closing cost obligations. So it's really great. It can satisfy, again, that number one biggest hurdle that first-time homebuyers face when making the leap into home ownership, which is down payment or the lack thereof. So what happens is that when the home is sold, the original loan that was given to the borrower in order to help them get into it, it might have been 5%, 10%, as much as 20% of the sales price of the home. That gets paid back to CalHFA in the state of California, along with a percentage of the gained appreciation from the date they bought that home to the date they sold that home, or whatever other qualified event happened that required them to sort of pay the piper. The maximum DFA loan that is going to be provided to borrowers this time around is up to $150,000 or 20% of the home price, whichever is less. So we're still dealing with up to 20% of the home price as assistance, but that number cannot exceed $150,000. That's the ceiling. Okay? The DFA is combined with only a CalHFA conventional first lien program. CalHFA, for many of you guys, that many of you guys know, has multiple programs, platforms that we can execute off of. We have first-time homebuyer programs that operate under the FHA platform, of course, the conventional platform, and even the Veterans Administration or VA platform. However, for the DFA program, the Dream for All program, it is only combined with conventional financing. Now, that's important for us to know as real estate practitioners, because conventional buyers have to have a slightly different financial capacity. Guidelines are quite a bit tighter than the complimentary FHA loan. So we want to start working with buyers early if we have the ability to do so, to make sure that we're putting them in a position to capitalize on this opportunity when it presents itself. So a question I get all of the time is, wait a minute, isn't this down payment assistance free money? Well, the simple answer is no way, not a chance. I mean, look, we're all smart people here. We all hear these offers all the time. There's no such thing as free money in the world. We all know it, right? I mean, short of a grant from like a nonprofit or a different type of housing organization, that is not this. This is absolutely a subordinate loan. So whatever money you're taking advantage of in order to supplement your ability to purchase a home, that will eventually have to be paid back. However, in addition to paying back the principal amount, the state of California is also going to get a piece of the appreciation that you've gained on that home. So how much of somebody's home appreciation will a borrower have to give back to CalHFA? Well, it depends on their qualifying income. So for all borrowers that are above 80% of the area median income, we're going to get into all of that later, so don't be too fixated on that right now. So CalHFA's, above 80% AMI, but below CalHFA's maximum income limit. We're going to talk about that as well. Then the appreciation is paid back at a 1-to-1 ratio. So what that means is that if you initially utilized 10% down payment in order to buy the home, the assistance in order to buy the home, then at the time you sell that home or under any other qualifying event, then you're going to have to owe the state of California or CalHFA equal to 10% of whatever the appreciation was from the time that you bought the home to whatever this qualifying event is. If your income was less than or equal to 80% of AMI, or the area median income, and we have a table where we can look this all up, then that's done at a 3/4-to-1 ratio, which is a little bit less. Right? So let's work this out. I've got a couple examples here that I prepared for you to see the program in action. So on the left-hand side, under example 1, this is an example of somebody taking a 20% shared appreciation loan in order to purchase their home. Now, in this scenario, the borrower's income is above 80% AMI, but below CalHFA's income limit. So it puts them into that first category that I just talked about. So on a $500,000 purchase price, the borrower is utilizing a 20% assistance in the shared appreciation loan, which is equal to $100,000, right? At the time of the sale of the house, that $500,000 house is now selling for $700,000. So when we subtract from the new sales price what the original sales price is, we realize that we have in this situation $200,000 of appreciation. Now, because it's a 1-to-1 ratio, because of the borrower's income profile, the amount of appreciation that they're going to share with CalHFA is equal to the 20% of the down payment that they initially borrowed. 20% of $200,000 is $40,000. So at the time the borrower has to make good on this loan, they are going to pay CalHFA back the original principal balance of the $100,000 that they borrowed, right? That's the initial 20%, plus $40,000, which is 20% of the $200,000 appreciation, for a total of $140,000 back to CalHFA. Now, scenario number 2 is very similar. However, in this example, the subject borrower is actually, their total qualifying income is below 80% of the area's AMI income. So in that case, they're going to pay back a little bit less. So in this situation, we're looking at a $400,000 home. The borrower is going to utilize a similar 20% shared appreciation loan, which is equal to $80,000, right? It's a little bit less because the sales price is a little bit less. Now, when they sell this home in the future, in this example, we're selling this home for $600,000. So there is that same $200,000 of appreciation gain from the date they bought that house, the price at which they bought it, to the date and the price at which they are selling it, or the other qualifying events that would elicit this to become due and payable, which I'll talk about later. Well, that amount of 20% is also $40,000. However, since their income was below 80% of the area median income, they do not pay on a 1-to-1 ratio. They pay on a 3/4-to-1 ratio, or 75 basis points, which equals $30,000 in this example. So when it comes time to pay back this loan, the borrower will pay back the original principal balance of the loan, which is $80,000, plus the additional $30,000, which represents their share of appreciation, for a total of $110,000 back to CalHFA. Now, whatever emotion that may elicit with you, for those of you that thought this was free money are probably taking a minute with this. But let me tell you, there are huge program benefits of being able to utilize this program. Here's just four of the most important that kind of came to mind. Number one is it's going to dramatically lower the monthly mortgage payment that the borrower has to pay on a monthly basis, right? I mean, you're simply, by putting $100,000 as a down payment versus putting 3.5% down payment on like a comparable FHA loan, it is going to be a dramatically lower monthly payment because you're simply not borrowing as much money. In addition to that, if you're utilizing the full 20% and you're utilizing it all for down payment, then you're also going to be able to remove the PMI, or mortgage insurance, on that loan, which could lower the monthly payment by an additional $200 to $400. So when you take that reduction of PMI, also with the reduction of the mortgage payment because you're simply borrowing less money, you guys, we're talking about comparable mortgage payments that could be literally less by a tune of $1,000 to $1,400. This is serious money, right? So, you know, when people are looking at, wait a minute, I got to pay back that money plus $40,000 of my appreciation. Let me tell you, during the extent of home ownership of this home, if you have a payment that is lower by $1,000 a month in 40 short months, which is less than 4 years, you will have saved an equivalent to more than that $40,000 that ultimately you're going to have to pay back to the program. You guys, this is the biggest no-brainer in the history of mankind. Now, the other thing that it allows a borrower to do, a first-time home borrower to do, is to secure their home today. Right? Because otherwise, they are faced with the proposition of having to go out there and save money to put down as their own down payment. Even when utilizing a down payment assistance program in a traditional sense, there's likely going to be an out-of-pocket expense that the borrower has to pay to the tune of up to $15,000 to $20,000, and that's on the low end, guys. So it's not easy to save that kind of money when you're paying close to $3,000 to rent a home for your family in an area where inflation is up and cost of living is high. You know, you might as well be telling people, hey, sorry, Mike, instead of $20,000, you got to save $200,000. For many people, it's the same thing. So utilizing a program like this allows you to move to action now and start gaining the appreciation and the tax write-off of owning a home today versus waiting to this day that you have to kick the can so far down in the future, if ever arriving there. Right? And fourth, and certainly this is not final, right? These are just four of sort of the big impact things that I put together there, is that it allows a borrower to qualify for a considerable increase in purchase price. Well, think about it, right? Lenders dictate what a borrower can qualify for, not based on the price of the home, but based on the corresponding mortgage payment that comes with that home. So if we're talking about a mortgage payment that is, I don't know, $600, $700, $800, up to $1,200, $1,300, or $1,400 lower, then they could potentially qualify for substantially more home. Maybe $100,000, maybe $200,000. Guys, this can be a significant number. Now, this does not mean we want to put people in homes that they can't afford. Now, it doesn't mean that by any means, but there are a lot of borrower profiles that have additional income in their household, but for one way or reason or another, a lender is not able to utilize it. Maybe it's a credit issue from a spouse, or maybe it is undocumented income sources that they have coming in from another family member or something like that. This allows somebody to really sort of push the limits on what the program will allow them to qualify for and get into a home that suits their needs that otherwise they might not be able to get into. So you guys, I cannot tell you enough. I mean, the program is amazing, and this is why you saw the ferocity of people jumping into the first round, and the money was exhausted within 10 days. I mean, it was insane. We knew it would go fast, but 10 days was exceptional. I'll tell you, I don't know if Nicole is on this list, because I'm not looking at the list of attendees right now. But literally, on the last time around, I was one of the lenders to have the opportunity to utilize this program multiple times. So in that short 10-day period, we were in there in the fight, Kirsten and I working these things out, and we successfully were able to close multiple loans. And the last one we did, CalHFA had sent out a memorandum letting us know that, hey guys, the money is likely going to be exhausted as early as next Monday or Tuesday. This was on a Friday. I called the agent that I was working with at that moment, and I said, you guys, I'm not feeling it. I think this money goes today. And we in partnership with the right team, were able to get this borrower's offer expedited and accepted. I jumped in, we reserved the funds, and literally 18 minutes later, CalHFA organization sent a memorandum saying, funds have closed, ladies and gentlemen, you're done. I later talked to a contact of mine over at CalHFA that I've known for 20 years. I've been working with this woman for so many years. She's just a wonderful asset to my list of tribe that I surround myself with. And she let me know that literally we had to be within like the last 25 reservations of the entire program. Guys, I mean, it doesn't get more lucky than that, right? Well, I don't know if I'd use the word luck, but it ended up working out really, really well for our borrower. So let's move on a little bit. And let's talk about the question number 2. Who is eligible to even participate in this program? Well, look, first of all, every borrower that is on that loan application must be a first-time home buyer. That is defined by someone who has not owned a home in the last 36 consecutive months. So technically, you could be a first-time home buyer 3 times within a 10-year period, right? Because every time 36 months of time exhausts between ownership of one home to another, you're considered a first-time home buyer again. So it's very important. These funds are allocated and utilized only for first-time home buyers, as the remainder of the CalHFA first-time home buyer programs as well. Borrowers need to be a U.S. citizen or a qualified alien. And also, at least one of the borrowers must be a current California resident. So let's play that out, right? If we have husband and wife who are currently living in Arizona, and they want to move to California as a first-time home buyer, and they're still living in Arizona at the time that they're qualifying for this loan, then unfortunately they would not be eligible. However, if borrower A is residing in California and borrower B is in Arizona, however, is going to make the move to California upon the purchase of this home, since borrower A is already and currently a California resident, then that would be a plausible situation. Now, this next thing I'm going to tell you guys about, you're going to really have to wrap your arms around, because this is an entirely new component to the program. At least one of the borrowers on the loan application, in addition to being a first-time home buyer, must be a first-generational home buyer. Now, what the heck does that mean? What is a first-generational home buyer? How do you even define that? Well, it's defined by either or of the following 2 criteria. Criteria number 1, they must not have been on title, held ownership interest, or were named on a mortgage to a home that's on a permanent foundation. So any sort of like mobile home in a mobile home park that's not on a permanent foundation, that does not exclude them. But if it was on a manufactured home that was on permanent foundation with its own land, then they are no longer a generational home buyer, a first generational home buyer. They must not have owned a home within the last 7 years, which is double the normal first-time home buyer classification. In addition to that, the borrower must be able to confirm that their parents do not have any present ownership interest in a home within the United States of America. And if they are deceased, they must confirm that they haven't had any ownership interest in a property at the time of their death. Guys, this is a big, big difference in the state of California, really trying to promote not only first-time home buyers, but also first-generational home buyers, right? Because there have been studies that show that housing is a key to legacy and financial wealth. There are entire organizations that really take that message to like the nth degree, and we should be teaching that also as real estate practitioners, right? It is the key to generational wealth, but somebody has got to start the process. And that is often very difficult for first-time homebuyers to do when they didn't grow up in a culture of home ownership. It's a big delta to jump to decide to make the sacrifice and do what is necessary to do to achieve the dream of home ownership. So this is just an extra little carrot out there to really incentivize those first-generational homebuyers to act. This is going to greatly reduce and slow down the dissemination of this money, you guys, right? Because not everybody's going to be able to check this box. At least one of the borrowers on the application is going to have to qualify as a first-generational home buyer. Now, the only exception to what I just covered is if the borrower at any time in their life was placed in foster care or institutional care, which is out-of-home care, from non-related caregivers, right? So traditional foster care would certainly qualify. So if they spent time as a foster child at any time in their life, then the first component that I went over, there's an exception around that, and that no longer is a qualifying event. So they would be free from the requirement of being considered, of being validated as a first-generational home buyer. Okay, so big, big, big difference, you guys. And it's really important that the lender that is working with qualified buyers or buyers who are trying to get qualified on this program is more than just a voice on the other end of an app or a website or just communicating via email, right? Because how do you properly validate these types of things without the appropriate amount of conversation and motivational interviewing that it takes to uncover these things? So, all borrowers must occupy the property as their primary residence within 60 days of purchase. This is another big myth buster out there, you guys. A lot of people don't realize that in any primary residence loan, whether it's an FHA loan, a VA loan, a conventional loan, there is the requirement from the agencies that the borrowers who buy the house are occupying that property as their primary residence within 60 days, right? This is a measure in place to avoid occupancy fraud, to make sure that people aren't utilizing the enhancements that are made for primary residence owners and instead utilizing these to buy things like second homes, vacation homes, or rental properties, right? So, and the lender has every opportunity and every option to validate that people did indeed move into that home. And believe it or not, if they didn't move into that home, they'll get a nasty letter requiring them to do so like in the next few days. And if they don't do that, the lender has every right to call the loan due and payable at that moment. Okay, but it's also important for you guys to know that in this particular program, non-occupant co-borrowers and co-signers are simply not allowed. So anybody who is on the loan application has to be living in the property as their primary residence within that 60-day time period. This is not the type of loan program where mom and dad, sister, brother, aunt, uncle can step in and help add the utilization of their credit and income to enhance their kid or their brother or their niece and nephew's program. If that is the type of situation that a borrower needs in order to qualify, we have lots of other programs that are very friendly with that, but CalHFA and in particular the Dream for All program, not allowed. Okay, so what kind of credit profile does a prospective buyer need to have to obtain this program? Well, it defers to just the normal CalHFA conventional loan guidelines, which means it requires a minimum of a 680 credit score for all borrowers that have income greater than that 80% area median income, or AMI. And most borrowers are going to fall under this category, and later on I'm going to break that down a little bit for you, and you'll see exactly why I say that. Now, for borrowers, however, that do fall under that 80%, under or equal to that 80% AMI, there's an extra allowance of 20 points on that credit score, which means we can execute this program with as low as a 660 credit score. Now, if a borrower is looking to pursue a manufactured home, which meets all of the qualifying manufactured home criteria, as well as it being on a permanent foundation, and coming with the rights and the reservations of buying the land along with it, you need to have a minimum of a 700 credit score. So also important to know if we're working with a borrower whose target is a manufactured home. And a manufactured home is a wonderful target for first-time home buyers. It really helps ease the burden of some of the higher price points while providing a wonderfully appreciative asset for them to own as a first home, if not their forever home. Now, in addition to that, however, if a borrower is buying a single-family residence or a condominium that's approved, then having a 700 credit score or higher, the program allows them an additional 5% leniency on their debt-to-income ratio, which just means that because of their good credit history, we allow them to qualify for a little bit more home, because they've shown the financial wherewithal and the responsibility to pay all their debts on time. So they're given a little bit more affordability to go out there and buy something they really want. Now again, even if you have a 700 credit score, if you're buying a manufactured home, you do not have that additional enhancement. So you need to be really aware of that as well. Now, qualifying income cannot exceed CalHFA's Dream for All income limitations. Now, these are county and area specific. I wrote down just there for you guys to see Riverside and San Bernardino County. The max qualifiable income is $149,000. To our friends just south of the Riverside County in San Diego County, that number jumps all the way to $185,000. And heading westward into LA County, that number actually goes up from the $149,000 to $155,000. And this is based on an analysis that CalHFA has done on median and average incomes within the area, as well as sales price. People often question why Los Angeles is so much lower than San Diego. You guys, it's simply because of the fact that LA County is such a bigger county and represents a lot of different diverse areas, right? There's Beverly Hills, and then there's also areas that are on the other side from a cost of living standpoint and a cost of real estate standpoint. So where they come up with is $155,000. These are great income limits, you guys. For some of the other county-driven down payment assistance programs, I get calls on these all the time. The income limitations are so low that they're almost unusable, right? Because at the prices homes are at today, even to get into an entry-level home, just merely qualifying for that home sometimes disqualifies the borrower for whatever that program is, because in order to qualify for that loan, their income had to be more than the program allows. It's kind of a nasty double-edged sword. But in this particular program, these are real incomes that we can work with. I mean, people making $150,000 a year, we can absolutely put them into a home, assuming their credit profile and what they're trying to buy is in line with that. Other counties certainly have different maximum loan limits. It's important that if you have any questions about a particular county that's not listed here, right? I just wanted to give you kind of like our more immediate radius here. But if you're in Northern California, Central California, anywhere else, please give me a call. Let me know. Send me a message. Shoot me an email. Shoot me a text. I'd be more than happy to let you know what your corresponding county will allow. Now, just to give, I'm going to do a quick note on AMI, right? Area median income. So to give you a little bit of an idea, I'm not going to break this down by county, but let's look at Riverside and San Bernardino County, right? So Riverside County's AMI is $76,500, right? Which is considerably below that $149,000. And we're starting to get into that territory where at $76,000, in order to qualify in some areas, even for an entry-level home, you're going to need an income profile that's higher than $76,000. So it might disqualify a lot of borrowers for that under 80% AMI, right? Because that's 100% AMI, by the way, $76,500. We would have to take 80% of that number, and their qualifying income would have to be less than that. So when you see me sort of alluding to the fact that most borrowers are going to fall in that 1-to-1 ratio because their income profile is going to be above the 80% AMI, however, below the maximum CalHFA income limit that you see here, you see why, right? Because that's generally the income profile that you're going to need even to qualify for a home, let alone a home on this program, okay? Now, what kind of homes can a borrower even buy with the program? Well, we already covered qualified manufactured homes. There are considerably more qualifying criteria for a manufactured home. You guys, these are tough to do. You want to make sure, buyers out there, that you're working with a team that 100% knows their way around from top to bottom how to execute a manufactured home purchase. The purchase contract is different, the loan application is different, the guidelines for qualification are different, the appraisal is different, and the criteria that the house itself has to maintain is considerably different. So different across the board. You don't want to be, buyers out there, you don't want to be working with a team where they're experimenting with this new type of real estate service with you, right? Work with a seasoned team that knows what the heck they're doing. Now, in addition to manufactured homes, though, a borrower can buy a one-unit single-family residence or an approved condominium. Right? And these are great options. That constitutes, between those three property types, it constitutes the majority of what first-time homebuyers are buying. But every once in a while, we have a first-time homebuyer that is looking to do a little bit of house hacking and maybe wants to buy a two-unit property, rent one of them out, and sort of, have somebody else pay their mortgage payment. I get it. That's a very good idea. And if a borrower has a little bit of down payment that they can utilize in order to buy that type of property, I think that's a heck of a way to get started in your investment portfolio. However, you're not going to utilize a CalHFA first-time homebuyer program if that's what you want to do. So it's important to know the difference. Now, so we talked about what the program is. We saw it in action a little bit. Now let's talk about what are the steps to actually obtain. And this is where buyers out there, you need to be super duper focused on what I'm about to cover right now. Now understand that CalHFA is still in the process of continuing to release updates on exactly what that process is going to be. So understand that this is just as we know it today. So there could be enhancements that get released next month as we approach April, which is when this thing is perceived to go live. So just take this with some degree of caution, and if you're connected with me, I will of course keep you updated with any changes as they happen. So step number one is to connect with an approved and seasoned CalHFA lender. You guys, I've been doing CalHFA loans for over 20 years. For all my lender buddies out there, if you're on this call, props up to Chadap, if you remember what that's all about, right? Hardly anybody knows about that anymore. But for those of us that were doing these types of solutions for the very valuable first-time homebuyer population, it was a big part of our arsenal. So you really want to make sure you're working with somebody seasoned. Working with CalHFA is a little bit like going to the DMV to get your loan. So you can get lost in paperwork and a little bit of sort of the bureaucracy that goes along with it. But if you're seasoned and you're working not only with a lending team that knows how to do this, but a real estate team that knows how to execute these offers, a processing team that knows how to process them, an underwriting team that knows how to underwrite them, and a closing team that knows how to actually fund them. It's important that everybody from beginning to end has a mastery of how to utilize this program. Step two is to complete a validated pre-approval with a lender. This is going to be more than just a conversation. This is going to be more than you just answering a few questions on somebody's app or website. This is going to require that your credit be run. It's going to be required that your income documentation be validated, right? It's not enough to just tell us how much you make. We have to prove that by looking at W-2s or pay stubs or potentially even tax returns in order to do that. We're going to have to take a look at a borrower's assets, certainly evaluate their debt-to-income ratio and where that falls in depending on where their credit score is, and come up with an approved budget that they can allocate towards home ownership. Buyers, listen to me right now. The biggest fatal flaw that any lender or real estate agent could ever do to you is when you ask them, how much do I qualify for? They answer that question in the context of a sales price of a home. Congratulations, borrower, you are qualified to buy a $500,000 home. There is no worse way that a lender or a real estate agent can serve you than by doing exactly that. Because here's the truth of the matter. I could show you a $500,000 house with a payment of $3,200. And I can show you another $500,000 house. Same exact price tag, same exact interest rate, same exact down payment that has a monthly payment potentially as high as $600, $700, $800 more. So a borrower may qualify for one of those $500,000 homes, but not the other $500,000 home, because the lender only cares about one thing: the borrower's ability to repay the mortgage, and that is calculated based on the budget and debt-to-income ratio associated with the monthly mortgage payment. So a correct real estate team that is serving you well will answer that question with a breakdown of what your maximum budget is from a monthly payment perspective, and then show you a range of prospective housing that falls within that budget, and also educate you on what are those levers out there that could result in an $800 increase to a mortgage payment, right? I mean, what the heck? Same down payment, same price, same interest rate. How could a payment be $800 higher? Well, the ancillary components to the mortgage payment, which are not principal and interest, things like property taxes, homeowners association dues, those are the things that can really take one payment from here to here. And it's important that we have our arms around this before a borrower goes out there and busts their butt with all the hard work it takes to finally get in contract for a home. So you want to make sure that you're completing a validated pre-approval letter. But the reason even more so why it's important on this program is that you will be required to obtain a California Dream for All lender pre-approval letter. Now, for all of you lenders out there that might be watching, this is not the standard pre-approval letters that we issue to borrowers every single day after a full review of their criteria. This is a very specific form. I put a little clip of it right there on the screen if you're watching. This is a specific CalHFA document. It's important that borrowers, you obtain this document after your validated pre-approval, because you're going to need this in order to secure your voucher to utilize this program. Now, how do you secure that voucher, right? Well, after you complete those first 3 steps, sometime in the month of April, CalHFA is expected to open up a DFA pre-registration portal. It'll be a website that you as a borrower can log on to yourself. They'll have a day that you can start. It won't matter that you're the first person in line. You don't have to wake up at 2 a.m. and stay there with toothpicks in your eyes until it opens up at 8 a.m. that morning. None of that stuff matters. This is not about a race, you guys. Okay, but you will have to, at the time that the window is open, you will have to visit that website on your own, not your real estate agent, not your lending team. You will be on that website on your own, on that portal, and you will submit your application. But part of that application process is uploading your pre-approval from a qualified CalHFA lender. So you need to have that document in hand. If you go to that portal without that, you're going to miss out. So it's critically important that you don't wait till April when that portal launches without doing those first 3 steps, okay? So the borrower is going to complete the pre-registration process, which again is step 5. You got to have that the appropriate pre-approval letter in order to do so. And then step 6 is simply in the hands of CalHFA. So qualified applicants, right? So CalHFA is going to identify that they met all the criteria that I talked to you earlier about, right? The first-time home buyer status, the first generational status for at least one of those borrowers, or the exception to get around that requirement. Once they identify all of those different things, then the qualified applicants will be randomly selected to receive a voucher once the portal is closed. Right? So portal opens up on day 1. It may be open for a week. It may be open for 2 weeks. It may be open for a month. We don't know those details yet. At some point in that time, you as a buyer are going to have to visit the portal. You're going to have to enter the application, upload your supporting documentation. Again, this is not a sprint, so there's no need to panic over this. No favorable position is going to be given. Right? It's not like, waiting for the Star Wars premiere and pitching a tent in front of the movie theater to get the best seat. That doesn't matter here, you guys. As long as you're within the portal period while it's open, then you will have just as much chance as anybody else to walk away with a voucher that entitles you to up to 20% shared appreciation loan up to $150,000. It is only at this time with the receipt of that voucher that you can jump into step 7, which is beginning your search for the perfect property. Okay? Makes sense? So there's a lot to do about it, guys. This is completely different than the first iteration of this program last year. I mean, wildly different. So any lender or real estate team that's out there talking about this the way they talked about it last year, you got to really, really be on the lookout for that. Buyers, you got to be really aware, advocate for yourself. I'm glad you're watching this and educating yourself on it so that you can really be in that seat of empowerment when you're dealing with your real estate team to make sure, in fact, that they are the appropriate real estate team to help you maneuver through this. So let's talk about some of the most frequently asked questions that I've been getting blown up with over just the last week alone. So, do all borrowers have to be first-generational home buyers? No. Only one of the borrowers has to meet the definition of a first-generational home buyer, right? However, don't forget, all borrowers on the application do have to be qualified as first-time home buyers, which means they still have the requirement of not owning a home, a primary residence, within the last 36 months. Okay? What is the minimum CLTV? This is another big change in what I believe is a great enhancement to the program. So the CLTV means the combined loan to value. Let me give you an illustration of this. So if a borrower is putting down their own 10% down payment, and they're taking 20% from the shared appreciation loan and adding it to their own 10%, which is now a total of 30%. Well, when you combine that with the first loan that they're going to have to get for 70% of that, your CLTV, or your combined loan to value, is 90%. Because 10% of the money used was not borrowed at all. It wasn't a first loan, it wasn't a shared appreciation loan, it wasn't a loan at all. It was just money you took from your own savings and put it into your home purchase. Well, in that situation, that borrower would not be able to qualify for the Dream for All program. Now, why are they insistent that a borrower cannot put more than 5% of their own money down? Well, it's because last year, some of the issues they had with people swooping up this money that didn't really need it. So borrowers that were putting 20% of their own money down could still leverage the last Dream for All funds to add an additional 20% onto that. And now we're talking about a 40% with absolutely no payments associated with it, and so their monthly payment was incredibly low. Well, that is not the intent and the nature of this program. So this is really money being put into the hands of perceivably people who really need it. So we got to make sure that the CLTV is between 95 and 105%. Are all borrowers required to make payments, or are borrowers required to make payments on the shared appreciation loan? Absolutely not. There are no payments at all. In fact, they're deferred for the entire life of the first mortgage. Now, I will tell you, they're not going to send your money back, right? So if you're borrowing that $100,000 and you choose to pay it off, let's say you pay $10,000 of it off, it does not change the factor of appreciation that you're ultimately going to have to share with the state of California or with the CalHFA program. And by the way, if you paid it all off, right? If you hit the lottery or you had an inheritance or came into some kind of bonus money and you decided to pay that off, at that moment you paid it off, you would be required to also pay back CalHFA with the appropriate amount of appreciation. And I'll give you another example of that in just a minute here. We are a little bit over that, or about to hit that hour mark, you guys. We're only got about another 5 minutes here, so I appreciate it if you kind of stick on. But is home buyer education required in order to access the Dream for All program? Absolutely it is. In fact, anybody who takes part in the CalHFA first-time home buyer programs, in any of their suite of programs, has to complete home buyer education and counseling. However, on this particular program, the Dream for All, just because it enters this element of shared appreciation, which a lot of people don't really understand, you're required to take an additional counseling program. At least one of the borrowers, in fact, has to take this additional counseling so that they really understand how the shared appreciation works and they can make an informed decision for themselves. Can the shared appreciation loan be used for down payment and closing costs? Yes, it can, absolutely. So there are many times where a lender may choose to take that 20% allotted loan and apply maybe 15 or 17% towards actual down payment and utilize another 3 to 5% to cover any closing cost opportunities. So like the ones that I was able to do last year, we were successful in actually getting that borrower into the home with zero money out of pocket, like nothing, zero, zero, zero. In fact, on one of those two cases, the borrower who had put an earnest money deposit down just to secure the application was able to be fully 100% refunded with that earnest money deposit. It's an incredible opportunity, guys. So can the shared appreciation loan be used to pay off a borrower's debt? I was going to write hell no, but I just decided to write no. But no, it absolutely cannot, right? So this is not an opportunity to improve the borrower's financial portfolio. That's totally on them. But if we can use this money and they otherwise have some of their own money saved up, then it would be a good tool to utilize their money, since they no longer have to put it towards down payment, to paying off debt, which might improve their credit profile and also lower their debt to income ratio. So it could be a powerful, powerful tool to pay off debt as well, just not with the use of the shared appreciation money. Can the borrower receive cash back from the shared appreciation loan? Absolutely not. Every penny has to be used for the purchase of the home. The exception is that getting the refund back of the borrower's initial earnest money deposit. But they cannot get a single dollar from the shared appreciation loan in hand when the transaction is over. Now, if your loan was locked before the Dream for All program gets released, can you switch? Thankfully, the answer now is no. That was not the case last year. So what happened is when the program got released, there were tons of people, to the tune of probably tens of millions of dollars, of people that were already in contract with other CalHFA programs. So if they were already in a CalHFA program, they simply switched over to the Dream program, utilizing 20% down and enhancing that program. And that was part of the reason why a lot of that money was exhausted so quickly. So now in this particular case, the borrower is no longer allowed to switch their reservation. So if they get in, that's why I put step 7 as going out there and looking for a home. If you try to get in escrow on a home and just hold it there, so when the program comes live, you can institute your voucher, it's not going to work. Because if the purchase contract was dated one day before the program went live, you're not going to get the program. This is super important. Tune in, tune in, tune in. When is the shared appreciation loan due and payable? When do you have to pay the piper? So repayment of both the original principal as well as any required share of appreciation is due and payable at the following times. When there's a transfer of title, which means you sold the house or gave it away, perceivably, right? But any times the title of the property changes, it's due and payable. If you sold the property, if you paid off the first loan, because again, you came into an inheritance or whatever, some lump sum of money and just decided to be mortgage free, at that time, the principal balance plus the shared appreciation would be due. Payoff of the subordinate loan principal balance. Remember I told you you could make payments on that money. They're not going to send your money back. If you paid off all of it, right? So in that first example I used, if you paid back the full $100,000, that's great, but CalHFA at that moment wants their percentage of appreciation as well. And then also, and by the way, this includes in a refinance as well, right? Because if you're refinancing your first loan, you are indeed paying off that first loan and getting a brand new first loan. So that would qualify again on that third event right there of paying off of your first loan. Now, the last one is probably not as logical to kind of think about, but if there's a formal filing and a recording of a notice of default, so if you're not doing your job, paying your mortgage payment, unless it is rescinded, that could trigger an immediate due on clause as well. This CalHFA is going to want their money back for sure. Now, a question comes up all the time. Well, it's really easy, right? Because if you bought a house at $400,000 and you sold a house at $600,000, well, you simply subtract one from the other and it tells you what your amount of appreciation is. That's $200,000, right? Super easy. But what happens if it's one of these other events that doesn't involve selling your home? How do you know how much your house is worth? Well, the same way we know how much your house is worth when you're in a home transaction, which is the securement of an appraisal, right? So it's up to CalHFA to come up with what the value of their home is. They may use an automated valuation model where they just put your address in and go, or they may require a physical appraisal to be done. And that's how they calculate what that percentage is. Is there any cap on the amount of the appreciation that the borrower will owe on the shared appreciation loan? Absolutely, that is equal to 2.5 times whatever the original principal loan balance was. So in that same example of borrowing $100,000, the most that borrower will ever pay, regardless of how many millions of dollars the house is worth in the future, is $250,000 in addition to the $100,000 original principal amount, which is a total of $350,000. And last question, and we're ready to wrap up, guys. What happens if the value of the home does not appreciate or, God forbid, goes down? What are you on the hook for? Well, in every situation, the borrower who obtains a shared appreciation loan is required to pay back the full principal balance of that loan. However, if the house did not appreciate or conversely went down in appreciation, then you're not on the hook for anything above and beyond that. But again, don't confuse that with the fact that you are absolutely liable and on the hook to pay back the full loan amount that you borrowed in that shared appreciation loan, even if you sell your home for less than what you bought it for. Important that you guys know that. Now, guys, thank you. I feel like I really flew through that. We really unpacked a lot of ground there in that short amount of time. Well, maybe it wasn't allowed. I'm sorry?
There were a couple questions I think that would be nice to get answered. One regarding the first generation home buyer. Liz asked, can one parent be a homeowner and the other not on loan/title?
No. So the guidelines clearly define it as parents, plural. So if you have two parents, whether they're married or not, it does not matter. Neither one of them can own real estate at the current time you're applying for the loan. Now understand, that doesn't mean they could have never owned real estate. They just cannot own real estate at the time that the borrower is trying to utilize this program to buy their home. And again, even if one of the parent may be deceased, then they have to be able to validate and confirm that at the time that parent was deceased, they also did not have any ownership interest in a property within the United States as well.
And then one other question, is the education that's required, is that required before entering the portal?
No, it's not. So that is generally initiated after the fact. Unless there is a further enhancement that comes before now, it's not. I don't think CalHFA wants to bog down the counseling units for people that ultimately are not going to obtain the program. For those lenders on the call or watching this, you guys remember last year, borrowers were having to wait extraordinarily long to complete their education, much longer than they have to wait in a normal situation. So I think it's confident to say that that is a secondary step. Once they are in escrow working with their CalHFA approved lender, the lender will be able to facilitate getting them